It's Praggnanandhaa taking on Nijat Abasov in the 6th round of the FIDE Candidates 2024. Believe it or not, this is the first ever time that both are playing against each other. Well, all the other players have played at least each other, maybe in Blitz, maybe in Rapid, I guess even in online play, but Pragg and Nijat have never played each other. So this is going to be the first time they clash, and it's very exciting to see. Pragg has been playing very well in this tournament. He did lose to Gukesh, but immediately struck back by beating Vidit. Against Jan Nepomniachtchi, he had a winning advantage out of his opening prep. So his opening prep has been just phenomenal. Something to look out for, something to watch out for, especially because he is being seconded and trained here by Peter Swidler. On the other hand, Nijat has been very solid, very difficult to beat him. His second is Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. Let's see how the game begins. The players shake hands and Pragg opens with d4 this time. So d4 played. Now the main aim that Pragg would want is to have a theory free encounter. Like his opponent shouldn't be prepared some 30-40 moves and then he gets no game at all. So how can he do that? First of all, d4, d5, he goes knight to f3. Maybe he wants to play the London, but it's without a doubt that Nijat would have prepared well for the London. So knight f6, and Pragg is taking his time for each move, considering carefully what his options are, and plays c4. So we have the Queen's Gambit on the board, and Nijat plays e6, declining it politely. Pragg now brings his knight to c3, and here there are many ways to play. You can go for the pure Queen's Gambit, you can go for the Ragozin. There's also the Tarrasch defense, which Nijat has chosen with the move c5. He hits the center, and now things can get very, very theoretical. If you take here on d5, white can take back on d4 and so on. So Pragg takes his time and plays the move e3, which is maybe not really fighting for a huge opening advantage, but just wants to keep a fresh position on the board. Nijat brings his knight to c6. We have complete symmetry here on the board, and now a typical idea here is to play what Pragg has done, a3, because you want to take and play b4 later. That's one of the concepts here, and Nijat also responds back by following the suit. He goes a6, so that if you take, bishop takes, pawn pushes forward, the bishop can settle back on a7. That could be an idea. Pragg now has to decide what is the way forward. He can take on c5, but he goes b3, and maybe theoretically this is not the best move, perhaps. You never know, but this is now a fight, because Nijat thinks for a couple of minutes. It seems like he's still in his prep. He didn't take a very long think. cd, and now ed, most likely by Praggnanandhaa. He takes back with the pawn, and Nijat simply finishes his development with bishop e7. You can also go, I guess, a move like g6 here to put the bishop on this side, but bishop e7 makes a lot of sense, and Pragg can continue with his bishop development to e2, but in fact he goes c5 and gains more space on the queen side. That's interesting, because if Pragg can get this bind, bishop out, castles, b4, then white has a lot of space, and Nijat now has to decide. He goes b6. General idea is to play b4 to bolster the structure, but Pragg takes, and this is a big decision. I want you to understand why Pragg's move is really very special here, because look, black has one pawn island and two, while white has 1, 2 and 3 now. So white's structure should be worse, but after b4, which Pragg makes, Pragg is essentially saying that my pawn on d4 is not going to be weak, because I'll put my bishop here, I'll play knight a4 to c5, and I'm going to clamp down the position. Nijat instantly goes knight e4. Very interesting move. If you have to take, then d takes, and then you lose the d4 pawn. So Pragg immediately goes knight a4. I like this move a lot. Very nice move, and he is going to put his knight on c5 later. So Nijat brings his queen back to b8, and Pragg has to now complete his development. He's slightly lagging behind, but I think he spent his time well. He spent his time on gaining space on the queen side, getting the c5 square. Very, very novel play here. Nijat castles, and that's a good move, and I think Pragg also can simply castle it out, and that's exactly what he has done. You must also consider that the a pawn is a slight weakness, because if you push your pawn to a5, there is b5 always. So that's the reason why bishop f6 is played, and a tricky and interesting move. He wants knight e7 to f5 maybe later. Pragg goes bishop e3, once again solidifying his center. He knows that this knight will do the job on c5. So that's the reason why first all other pieces should strengthen the center, and knight goes back to e7. Pragg puts his knight to c5. Nice move. The knight is well positioned there. If you take here, then I think pawn takes and you get a nice b file to play with. Nijat goes knight to c3, forking the two pieces, but Pragg says, I'm happy to give away my bishop here, especially because your bishop on c8 is so passive. So knight takes e2, queen takes on e2 has been played, and now slowly, you know what white can do is put one rook here, put the other rook here, play a4, play b5, and before you know it, the plan is flowing. So Nijat has to be careful here, because Pragg's plan is pretty simple and he can actually execute it, and his issue is this bishop on c8, which is not at all active. Pragg now plays this move, rook b1, which we were talking about, because if you want to play a4, you need to defend your b4 pawn. So nice move there by Praggnanandhaa. And Nijat now, how long can he wait from doing something active? Well, the answer seems to be not too long. He plays e5. He opens up his bishop here on c8 and hits in the center. The only downside to this move is that after Pragg will pick up this pawn, the d5 pawn is a weakness, and that is something which is quite a big weakness. Bishop takes on e5 has been played, and now you can play your rook to d1 to put pressure on d5. Yes, he plays his rook to d1. This is tough now, because playing here is a blunder. I take and put my bishop on c5, and you are in trouble here. So clearly Nijat goes d4. I like this move, but bishop d4, knight d4, knight d4, giving up this pawn and playing here with dominating knights seems to be the best way. But Pragg chooses bishop g5, which is also interesting, and maybe now just you can drop your bishop back, because the knight and the queen are attacking the bishop. He goes bishop d6, good move there, and you shouldn't be taking this pawn, because if you take here, you're simply going to lose a piece. This is pinned here. So Pragg goes here g4. Whoa, Praggnanandhaa is fearless. He says to the knight, where is the space you have? Where are you going? Isn't your knight trapped? Nijat says, sorry my friend, my knight is not going anywhere. I'm attacking your bishop, because once your bishop moves away, my knight can go back to e7. Pragg goes queen e4. Now these are not random moves. The reason why he went here is if you take, black could interpose and hit the rook and then pick up this bishop. So that's the reason why he first went queen e4. He takes on g5 now, and Pragg will also take back on f5. So this position is very, very interesting. White seems to have an edge because g5 is weak, d4 is weak. He goes rook a7. What a pretty move. What a nice move by Nijat Abasov. How did he manage to find this move? Because now after knight takes g5, there is rook e7, and if you try to mate me, then bishop f5 wins for black. So Pragg goes and chops off the d4 pawn. He takes it with his rook, and Nijat now has to find rook e7 to keep this going, keep the position going. No, he plays g4. Well, I guess he wants that if queen takes g4 here, then bishop c5 simply wins, because now the rook is unprotected, the queen has been distracted. But Praggnanandhaa simply goes knight to g5 after this. that could be the idea, that he wants to put his knight on g5. You can see Praggnanandhaa coming in, just getting relaxed on the chair, and finds it. He plays knight to g5. Excellent move. The knight is well positioned, and threat could be f6 in order to checkmate on h7. Well, Nijat says, give me your pawn. That's an important pawn to be snatched and grabbed. He's taken on h2, and Pragg needs to move his king. He goes king g2. Now remember that this diagonal is terribly weak. If a bishop can come there on this diagonal at any point, it would give black a huge advantage. But this knight on c5 simply dominates the bishop on c8. Queen e5 was played here, and now Pragg plays rook to d5. Nijat takes, queen takes queen, and I think knight takes queen. So we reach this position with sort of equalish material on the board, four pawns per side. White has two knights, black has two bishops. Amazing imbalance. What I think is the biggest problem here for black is that his bishops are way passive than the knights, and now f6 would be very, very powerful, especially because is he playing it? Yes, he does. What a move! Because if you play g6 now, then rook h1 is a very, very strong idea. The rook is very well placed, and then you try to mate him down the h file. So, and now Nijat plays bishop to f4. Pragg brings his rook to d1. He could have also put his rook on h1. Brings his rook here. Nijat plays his rook to c7. A useful move by the rook. And now Pragg brings his rook up the board. He is playing this very carefully. He's keeping all his pieces intact, making Nijat sort of also take care of his time. By the way, Nijat has right now 13 minutes while Pragg has just 6 minutes left. So Pragg has to speed up a bit, but brilliant defense here by Nijat Abasov as well. And now what is Pragg doing? He goes knight to d6. This is a good move, because if you take, this resulting position is dominating for white. So you don't want to do that. But also the bishop is attacked, so g5 is the right move that has been found, also making some space for the king now to move. Pragg chops off the bishop on c8, and rook takes c8. Yes, he takes with his rook. So this pawn is now attacked on f6. Check here. Okay, very interesting. I believe he will take rook takes d8. Yeah, rook takes d8, rook takes d8, check. King h7 is the move that I think he will play. And now you want to bring your rook here and chop off this pawn, which Pragg does it. We are on move 38. And now very important to go rook d6, so that after rook takes a6 you enter on d2 with the ideas of g3 getting play. But Nijat gets a bit greedy, and what could be more natural than winning that pawn? The problem now is that even though black has a one extra pawn here, it's not so easy to create a passer. Meanwhile, white has two passers here, so it was very important for rook to come down to d2 instead of going for that pawn. Last move before the time control. Pragg has 3 minutes in hand. He plays knight d7. This knight is an absolute beast, looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 very beautiful squares there. And Nijat now has to maybe go knight bishop d2, last move before time control, and he blunders with king g7, a massive blunder, and that too on the 40th move, giving Praggnanandhaa this chance, because king g7 is very logical. You don't want knight f6 check anymore, and you want to activate your rook, as we were talking about. But Pragg has to find the only move now to win the game, and he does so with rook a5 just by taking 1 minute on the clock, 1.5 minutes on the clock. He finds rook a5, king g6, very important, because if you took here, then ba5 is winning, that pawn would queen, but king g6, and now Pragg has one winning move, once again finds it, a4 with just a minute on the clock taken. Take here, and now the a pawn will push through. That is the idea, it seems. Nijat does go g3, and I think it's a logical move to play, but it's just that it's too late, this counter play. Also the rooks are getting traded, so this may not work so well. And Pragg takes the rook, calmly does it. King takes f5, and now a5. Just push the a pawn. And black's problem is very simple. This square he needs to control with the bishop, or with the bishop here, but both are controlled by the white pieces. So Nijat has to take on f2. Yes, he's made a square for his bishop on e3, but the problem is after a6, bishop e3, there is knight to c5 blocking, and a7 a8 is coming. So Pragg does push a6 here, fantastic move, and with this he's just winning. He's played an amazing game here, Praggnanandhaa. Also Nijat fought very hard in this game, but it turns out that Pragg has been the superior player here, taking some key decisions. Well, Nijat rolling the pen in his hand, he knows that the writing is on the wall. He can actually resign here and be proud that he played a great game. Praggnanandhaa will move to +1 in this tournament, which is actually a very good score. He will move to 3.5 out of 6, and resignation there. Pragg has scored a very important win, and very cool chess by both the players. Really enjoyed that 2 knights versus 2 bishops position in the middle game.